Hello, hello, hello everyone.
Hello, hi Alvaro. Hi everyone.
Hi, my name is Alvaro, and today, along with Jeffrey C., we're going to answer the question of this presentation: Can entrepreneurs bring peace to North Korea? Yeah, a little bit about myself. My name is Alvaro. I was born in Spain, and I've been living in Asia for the last 6 years. I'm a marketing and communications specialist, and I also work with social exchange and as an associate and program manager. And also, I've been a campusero for over 2 decades, and I've been attended to over 8 editions in Spain, Europe, Latin America, and in Singapore also. So it's a great pleasure for me to be part of this first edition of the Campus Party Digital. And I'm going to introduce my friend and Chosun Exchange founder, Jeffrey. So, hi, Jeffrey. Welcome to your first Campus Party. What do you say?
Very excited to be here. I heard so much about the great ideas. I think it's a great forum to share a bit something I care about. So I think just a bit about myself. I was born in Singapore, as you know, Al. I've lived and studied and worked in the US, China, Korea, Singapore. I kind of did some fairly conventional things, work in a corporate company, work in some startups. But I think, today I'm here to talk about this very unconventional track I took in part of my life, which is to build this organization called Chosun Exchange and to work in North Korea. And kind of how it came out from a combination of a series of bad decisions in life, which led to, hopefully some very good outcomes. So excited to be here to share more about this work.
Fantastic. So I guess it's better if we start from the beginning. I mean, what is Chosun Exchange exactly? I mean, I remember you mentioned the origin of the name. What does it mean?
Yeah, so we are a non-profit organization. We bring volunteers to North Korea to help teach business, economics, law, and we also bring North Koreans overseas to get exposure. So I think all in all, in the last more than a decade, we've brought more than 100 over volunteers to North Korea to train over 2,500 North Koreans and get them exposed to topics which they normally don't get a lot of exposure to inside the country. So I think in a nutshell, that's what we do. And I think our aim is to build that first generation of startups and entrepreneurs in the country.
Well, so we do in-country programs, but we also do, for example, overseas programs like this one. I believe this picture was taken in Malaysia, right? Which kind of people, audience attends to these workshops overseas, outside of North Korea?
Yeah, so we bring. So basically, this was a workshop we did, I think, in 2016. As part of this mini MBA program that we're running. So we brought a group of North Koreans who are learning how to encourage startups in this new economic zone that was sitting outside of Pyongyang, about 1 hour away. So they were kind of in a satellite city, and they were at this very early stage of saying, like, oh, we are a bunch of scientists. How do we take the research that we are doing and turn it into consumer products or to viable businesses? So we actually went to visit different incubators around the world, help them understand like acceleration programs, business model canvases, and how to think about that early stage journey. So I think the people that came on this program are quite, I would say, quite similar to the audience we generally get in the country. You have people trying to build their first business, people already working in a bigger company, or you have some policymakers, or you have some academics and researchers.
That's cool. Well, so this is one of the overseas programs that we do, but mostly what we do, we focus is on in-country programs. And this photo is from my first trip to North Korea back in November 2018, and it was during the Pyeongseong Startup Festival. Pyeongseong, as you mentioned, is one of those special economic zones that is outside of Pyongyang. And in this picture in particular, one of our colleagues, he's doing a workshop about innovation and creative thinking. And he challenged the audience to make a paper plane, because everybody knows how to make a paper plane, but the way that we approach to the same challenge is different in ways. So this is one of the most memorable moments of that workshop. And I guess that this has evolved a lot since you started 10 years ago. How would you say those first workshops were, and how it changed after 10 years?
So what were they trying to do with this paper plane exercise? Yeah, like is it to kind of show how different groups
how they approach to the same task, as in to make a paper plane. How they do it, because in the end, many different ways of making a paper plane. So as in a problem, how do you solve it?
Yeah, so I think it's very interesting, right? I mean, you talk about the very involved experience, the very interactive experience they have in the workshop. And I remember when we first went to North Korea, this was a very, very new concept to them. I think firstly, foreigners telling them what to do on the economy was itself, I think, very unusual. And then secondly, the idea that I remember the very first trip we went there in 2010 to run our first workshop. We were doing this lecture and people were very stiff, very quiet, and we kind of at some point were thinking like, oh, do they understand what's going on? So we said, we want to break them up into breakout groups. So we have like each lecturer attached to a group of 6 North Koreans, and then they can kind of have a back and forth on the topics. And when we said we were going to do it, everyone just froze up. We had some North Koreans there who were behind us, and they were just like, no, you cannot do this. It's not on the schedule. We didn't discuss this ahead of time. I'm like, no, we're just going to do it. So there was a lot of back and forth, arguments. And then finally they're like, okay, we just said, we're just going to do it, right? You can't stop us. So we ended up doing it. And it was very good because the people actually, they had a lot of questions. They wanted to ask a lot of things. But it was just for our partners, they had never seen it. So this was more than a decade ago. And I think what you see today is just very different, right? We have the trust established. There is a lot of engagement with the participants, with the volunteers who are coming in, and some audience still take time to warm up, but I think they have gotten very used to this style of interactions in the workshop. So I think for me that's been amazing.
Yeah, I mean that's great, baby. Because we also try to teach them different ways of thinking and innovating. And this is where one of those exercises that we did, that they had to reinvent Pyongyang's metro system, and they could do anything they wanted. So in the end, the viability of the project, I mean, it wasn't really important. It was just how to make something completely new and different. And I love this one in particular because they created the concept of the deepest subway in the world. But it wasn't just a subway. It was also the deepest museum, the deepest restaurant, ski, river, even a wedding venue for you to get married. Imagine. So these are ways of approaching and innovating. Is definitely something that it helps them on the day-to-day when they have to create new businesses in the country, and they struggle with that. And the other
an entire city underground.
An entire city underground might be too much, but this was to make the biggest and deepest subway underground of the world. And they also, they drew this concept on the whiteboard, as you can see. And yeah. They're very receptive to this kind of new things. So when we show it to them, like for example, in this one, during the DPRK Economic Forum, it's other of the programs that we do in country. And in this case, we brought this VR headset for the participants so they could see a VR simulation, and they just love it. So this picture, I took this picture, and you can see the guy, he's like amazed as in what is he seeing inside the VR simulation. And he's surrounded by a lot of people because they want to grab the VR headset and try it on themselves because they're like super, super curious about it.
Yeah, I have to emphasize, we did not leave the headset in there. We make sure our program is sanctions compliant. And I think that's one of the big challenges with the work, where I think the operating environment is always very tricky. It keeps changing year to year, and we kind of stay on top of those things. But I mean, this was just great to be able to give them a glimpse of just the broader economy outside of the country. And what's happening there, and all the innovation that's happening, and why they should try to plug themselves into the global economy.
So these are the main 3 programs that we do in country, but we've done over the last 10 years a lot of these, also including a Women in Business Master program, also the St. Gallen Symposium in Switzerland. So it's quite variety, but I think it would be better if we go to the region of this project that you started. I mean, it was 10 years ago, as you mentioned, and this photo is from the very beginning. I mean, can you tell us the story of this first trip and that specific moment that changed and gave you the idea of creating this?
Yeah, so Al, I first went to North Korea in 2007 Actually, before that, I was, I went to Seoul in 2005 for a conference, and I met people who were from divided families, people who were refugees, and took an interest in the issue. Right? So that's kind of how I first heard about it. Before that, I knew basically nothing about Korea, the Korean Peninsula. And then in 2007, I did my first trip in there as just as a tourist, and it was fascinating to me when I was on the ground there. I came in, I was doing my business undergraduate at a point in time, and I kind of just assumed most North Koreans would be, I just had this stereotypical image of brainwashed North Koreans. It's a communist country, they will not be interested in business, in economics. But when I meet some of the younger North Koreans there, like this young lady, I realized they were all very curious about it. I think they're starting to see the changes in the economy. as people like myself or people from China come and visit, they're starting to see, people have changed, right? They're a lot wealthier. They have all these consumer goods. So people are asking this question of like, what are we missing out? And one of these young North Koreans told me, she said, I want to be a business leader to show that women can be great business leaders. And I was just surprised because one is that there was that deep interest in business. Secondly, there was that very strong personal aspiration. It's not like, I want to do this because I want my country to be great. Or it's just like, I want to show something that's different, right? I want to show that I'm a good entrepreneur. I want to change something about this world. So for me, that was just mind-blowing, mainly because I had all these stereotypes coming in. So when I was leaving, I just said, is there anything I can do for you? And she told me, if you can just bring an economics textbook, that would change my life, because it's so hard for me to access any of these materials. So when I left the country, I thought, this would be fairly easy to do. But it ended up being like a 2-year journey trying to find a way in there to get anything of that sort into the country. So that became the initial foundation for how we started Choose on Exchange.
That's very interesting because in North Korea, women are like a very entrepreneurial, and it was a woman that she asked you that question that sparked this beginning of the Choose on Exchange, and this is one of the first workshops, right? When you went there.
Yeah, it's the first trip was I told you before like how bizarre it was to me on the very first trip, and I just recall all this like. That awkwardness. It was experiment on both sides. For us, it was an experiment. For the North Koreans, it was an experiment. And I think they also didn't know what they were expecting out of this. The context was I asked for 2 years to find a way to go in there to do something. We did have a lot of success. And then in 2009, there was a currency reform in the country. It didn't turn out as expected. And I think as a result of that, they became a lot more open to learning from the outside world. So they, like the North Koreans know I've been asking for 2 years, and they actually reach out to me and say, can you bring some volunteers in to run a training program on economic development? So that was the origin of our program. And I remember on that very first trip, when we were in there, so we were in the university, Kim Il-sung University. It was the top university in North Korea, and one of the funny incidents was that there was a security camera at the top of the room. So it was like kind of moving around, the light was blinking, it was clearly recording something. And I would approach North Koreans, and this is something you find very common. Al, you've been there with us a few times, you know what I'm talking about, where sometimes people like they're doing something, they have to do it, but they are very embarrassed or they don't know how to explain it to you, right? So they kind of like, so this guy was like, I pointed to one of the minders there and I say, are they filming the session? And he looks up at it, we looked up, and then the camera is like swirling around, the light was blinking, and he's just like, nope, it's not recording. I'm like, why is it swirling around? It's like, nope, it's not recording anything. And I'm like, it's clearly recording something, right? So I remember that first trip was full of this kind of frustration, misunderstanding. And it kind of like takes time for us to, I think it took a good 4 years before they were truly comfortable with what we were doing. We had early trips where people would tag along. And one of the trips, our partners, like very senior boss, came down and he was just like, we asked, what's this guy doing here? And they're like, he's tagging along to see what you are doing, because he's heard some complaints. And I was like, okay, let's just run the program and see what he says at the end. So the whole trip, he just refused to talk to us. He was kind of a bit worried. But at the end of the trip, I was like, oh, so how's it been? And our North Korean partner was like, oh, he's actually very happy. He sees what you're doing. He sees the participants really enjoying and benefiting from the program, and he thinks they should go on. So there's a lot of this like strange experiences there that go on in the background. But
I guess it's a matter of most of the beginning, I mean, to build the trust with those partners and still stakeholders in North Korea, because at some point, I mean, one day, I mean, this foreigner shows up and say, hey, I want to just help entrepreneurs here. It might be very, very strange. So for that, I mean, you have to travel there a lot of times at the beginning just to make them trust you. And how many times you've been to North Korea?
Wow, I've been there probably 40 times, more than 40 times.
40 times.
Yeah, but it's still always great in a sense. I mean, one thing that keeps me going back there is that it's kind of like an onion, right? The country, you know so little of it. You read so much about it these days, but you kind of realize that all those things you read about tends to be, there's very little real information underlying a lot of it. There's a lot of opinion and very little information. So each time I go there, I feel like I'm peeling back a layer of this onion. I'm like learning a bit more why people do certain things. Why do they say certain things? How do they understand and read the world? And I think that's the experience that we want the volunteers to also take away, right? We're not just there to provide knowledge. We're also there to understand better, what's going on in there and what are the people there really like and thinking.
Exactly. I mean, I've been there 3 times, and I know a lot more since the first time. But still, I can feel that there's so many things that the more I know, the more I understand. There's still so many things that I need to work with, because in the end, it's a conflict region. I mean, and this makes us very difficult, I mean, to develop our work, because technically, it's a country that has been at war for over 70 years. And mostly when people hear about North Korea, the first thing they think about it's nuclear missiles, and I mean, that makes it more difficult, I mean, to invite volunteers to come and join us to teach entrepreneurs in North Korea, because they're afraid, they're scared.
Yeah, I was curious, Elle, when you made the decision to join us on your first trip, how do you feel? Like, what made you decide that it was okay to go in there?
I mean, I remember that I was always fascinated about North Korea, and I always wanted to go there, but I didn't know how to go there in order to not be just a tourist. We used to have this kind of a meaningful experience, and I never thought that there was an organization like Chosun Exchange that could allow me to go there and do something for the country. So the moment that I found out about Chosun Exchange, I said, yeah, I mean, I would like to apply to this, and if I'm lucky, then they choose me to go there, then it will be fantastic for me, this opportunity to teach them what I do, which is marketing and communications, and also say a little bit about the country. So I remember making the decision like quite fast, and not being actually like aware of the situation as I was landing in Pyongyang. I mean, landing there, it's quite an experience. It's a huge, magnificent airport that is pretty empty. And then the customs process is a little bit slow. It takes you maybe like an hour or so to get through. They look through your stuff. They check how many laptops or phones that you're bringing. But then after 2-3 days, I remember just like feeling like, okay, comfortable, safe. I mean, that was the main feeling. And I was surprised that I wasn't surprised. That's what really shocked me. It's like, this is like much more normal than I thought. So that's.
So were you scared hitting in, or you're not afraid at all?
I never was like really scared. Worried, yes, a little bit, of course. I mean, mostly when they start going through your stuff, because you haven't been to a country that just after landing they go through your things like quite thorough. But you see that it's like a quick check. It's like, okay, I mean, you're not bringing anything that is illegal that you shouldn't be bringing. It's okay, so it's not that big deal. And that's why I thought it's like maybe I could volunteer like more actively with Chosun Exchange, and I decided to go again as a second time as a volunteer, and then become a coordinator, because I see that there's a lot of things to do there, and it's extremely difficult.
Yeah. So I mean, this slide, I think for us, just captures the importance of what I feel we do, right? I mean, it's like North Korea and Korea as a whole. It's I think for the region, it's a frozen conflict. It's been in that state for so many decades. and everyone's looking for a solution out of it. And it's a country that's bordered by nuclear powers. It has nuclear power. It's bordered by countries that have the potential to go nuclear. So I think so far it's generally been a very safe environment. But I think there is always the risk that if we do not manage the future of this peninsula well, my fear is that we could risk fight between some of the most powerful countries in the world. U.S., China, Russia, there, Japan, South Korea. I think it'll be horrendous for not just for the region but for the world. So I think again, it's just how important I see this space and the little bit that we do on the Korean Peninsula.
Yeah, exactly. Because we all know that North Korea is like an information vacuum, and for example, Dennis Rodman was the first American actually meeting Kim Jong Un after he got in power, and he went there to play basketball, which was quite a famous trip and such. So we also struggle to find a trustworthy news of sources. Because you hear something one day in the news, and then the next day it's the opposite. It's extremely difficult. So everything is like slower in that sense. So don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the challenges dealing with this issue is that there's so much written about it, but so little we actually know about it. And I think to Dennis Rodman's credit, and I remember he was so lambasted at the time for going to North Korea, but he actually became one of the rare Americans to have met Kim Jong-un and understand to a degree like how is he thinking about the future of his country, his people, the world, and became a very important source for U.S. society in understanding North Korea. And I think very often we underestimate the importance of this kind of things. I remember shortly after the summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Singapore, the White House actually reached out to Dennis Rodman and thanked him for his work, going to North Korea multiple times, because it became a very important source of understanding on, what the intentions of this mysterious new leader in the country. And I think it also kind of reminds us that we need to have, in some ways, more of these channels to, not just to educate people there, but also just to understand and have a better sense of like what's going on in there and how people think, and have that first-hand ability to analyze the situation.
I mean, there's great content out there. There's books from journalists that have done a fantastic work of journalism and trying to piece everything together. But the problem is that the learning curve for everyone outside is that the information, like everywhere, goes so fast that you might read a book just when it's out, but maybe that information, it will come outdated, maybe in a few weeks, in a few months. So just being up to date with what's really happening there, it's quite difficult. And that's why this the summit, for example, was very important between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un, because that brought them together, and at least they had a chance to talk and just bring positions a little bit closer. And I'm not sure, but I think you have one of the coins, or the commemorative coins, back in your shelf, right?
Yeah. I'm glad you saw it. So this it's from it's from the Trump Kim summit in Singapore. So I've kind of bought one of these little coins to I think remember the hope that we had in 2018 that we had finally hit a rapprochement between both countries. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the way it is. But we still, I think we do our work with the hope that someday there will be peace and there will be an end to this conflict. So I think that's the lens in which you have to view the future, right?
Yeah. So so all these challenges, as in a conflict zone that has been technically at war for over 70 years, this information vacuum, it's also about being watched. Not only on the outside, but also inside the country. And you mentioned before about these experiences on your first trips. As far as I know, this photo is a classic moment of volunteers when they go to the Pyongyang hotel, that they start looking around for microphones and see if they're being surveyed. Honestly, I did that on the first time, on my first trip. I didn't find anything. I don't know about you.
Yeah, so this was from I think our trip in 2010, and we had a workshop leader who was just obsessed with I want to find a mic in the room. So he starts trying to dismantle everything, the flashlight. We weren't professionals. We didn't find anything. That's not to say there wasn't anything. But I remember one of my trips, I was there with my colleagues, so we shared rooms to save costs. And I was telling him like, oh, the room is so cold, it's so cold. And I didn't know there was a thermostat you can actually adjust to change the temperature.
Really?
But 30 minutes later, the North Korean hotel staff came up. They knocked on the door and they peered inside. They said, oh, we heard your room is too cold. Can we come in and help adjust the thermostat? And I was like, wow, that is great service.
But we heard how.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it was just bizarre, we don't have anything to hide, but we kind of just after that I was just okay. I assume like people are listening. I think on this very first trip, I remember we had two very paranoid colleagues who every day is just, they find it so interesting, right? You meet all these North Koreans, you see what's going on, and then they go back and we want to dissect everything we see out there, and they will hide in the toilet, and then they would turn on the tap, and then they're like passing notes to each other, and I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty extreme, but it was quite funny. It's quite an experience.
Yeah, I remember after my first trip, some friends had asked me that if going to North Korea, it was a little bit like being in the Truman Show movie, like everybody was actors, just pretending and acting. And of course, in the first few hours, maybe the first day, I was trying to look any kind of a weird kind of situation or moment. I mean, it's very quickly you realize that that's not possible, because the amount of time and effort, to have everyone coordinated and having people, listening to your conversations. That maybe they were listening to what you say about the room temperature, but maybe it was just a coincidence. We will never know. But the thing is that that makes us a little bit more complicated, because we need to be aware about what we say. Every moment. So as long as you have common sense and you're cautious, it should be all right. I never heard about a problem of anything like this.
Yeah. I mean, it's not an easy environment to be in. I think for anyone new there too, it's it is definitely it's a very different experience. But I think there is also a tendency to overthink too many things. Like you mentioned, this Truman Show experience. Like everyone goes there and they feel like, oh, everything is done because I'm there, and they're doing all these things because I'm there. And then you kind of at some point realize like, oh, actually I'm not that important. No one really cares. Yeah.
And on top of that, we have, of course, the language barrier. It's challenging also because I understand that you speak a little bit of Korean. Unfortunately, I always say thank you very much, and pretty much that's it. And that was my first trip back then in Pyeongchang, and I was trying to work with my group, trying to understand what were the business about. What do they do? And even with the help of the translator there, I think it took me maybe like half hour to fully understand what they were doing. So imagine, this elevator speech, they have 20 seconds to say what you do, and it takes you half hour. So I'm sure that on the first trip you didn't speak Korean, but you saw that you had to learn Korean in order to be able to communicate with them, right?
I think the challenge is not just the translation element. We conduct the classes in English, and they have to translate into Korean because most of the Koreans there don't understand English. But I think the biggest challenge is how do you communicate concepts in a way that people who have lived in a very different experience, grew up in a totally different environment, have very different base of knowledge and understanding of the world, how are they able to understand those concepts? So I like one of the words, we use a lot is entrepreneurship ecosystem. So we say, oh, you need to build an ecosystem, you need to build an ecosystem. And you can translate the word into Korean, but for us, then we attach so much meanings to this phrase, right? Entrepreneurship ecosystem. It's tied to a whole bunch of different things. For the North Koreans, they'll be like, oh, I've never heard that word being used in this context before. Like, what does it mean? What does it imply? What are all the things that you have to unpack from that word? And I think that's something that we become a lot more conscious about. How do we better and effectively communicate meaning to people that just don't have the same background as we do? And I think that's always been the trick when we talk about this translation issue. It's not just like, oh, this is the word in Korean.
You're right. Now I remember that I had this situation during this panel discussion that somebody in the audience, they asked me if I could explain what was the main difference between a brand and a logo.
what? And brand and logo.
Brand and logo. Just
Okay.
imagine. So something that for you and me, it's like super easy. It's like obvious, like dumb. I mean, to break down those pieces into something like very, very, very easy to comprehend. For example, they were like super extremely interested during that trip about the concept of intellectual property.
Yeah.
They really wanted to understand that, because for them it's like it's something that's completely new and foreign. So yes, it's not just the language, but also by the concepts. But the good thing is that, entrepreneurship, it's really happening. I mean, the photo on the right, I think it's a cafe, right?
Yeah, so this is an interesting picture. So it's like you have a bar there, you have a cafe, one of the very, very early cafe prototypes in the country. And I think for me, it's a very fascinating glimpse of life there and how it's changing from the point where we started to where it is today. And I think, if like going back, it's a communist economy originally, and there wasn't much of a consumer culture, right? But as people start accumulating wealth, they have a bit of surplus income. People look for entertainment options. They look for leisure, and they're trying to find that. And it's not easy to find, because before that there wasn't a lot of options to do all of this. So what I found fascinating in the years when I started to later periods is that you're starting to see all these restaurants and cafes pop up in the city, because people needed a place to go to relax, to spend, to enjoy themselves. And I think it's an example of how entrepreneurship is happening, not just in response to the demand in the market, but also just the fact that people are starting to have a bit more wealth, and they're building a bit of a consumer culture. And I remember, I think around 2014, 2015, there was this huge craze over coffee shops. I think it became a very trendy thing in the country. And we had a volunteer who was from Shanghai. He ran his own coffee shops, and he visited the country, and people were just obsessed with him. He was like treated like a mini star in the country. We're in a hotel. We're telling you, oh, we have this guy. He was doing coffee, and suddenly the news just spread through the whole hotel, and all the staff in all the different restaurants there, somehow lobbied their managers and turned up at the workshop the next day. And they all had like, we want to learn about this coffee making thing from this expert. And when we were leaving the country, the customs officer actually stopped my colleague. He was like looking at his passport for a long time, and my colleague started like freaking out, this volunteer. And he said, "Oh, you are the coffee guy. I heard about your workshop." And he was like, "Wow, okay, this is just amazing." So there's just kind of like some of these trends in the country, and entrepreneurship is happening, consumer culture is happening slowly, but I think very surely.
Yeah, this reminds me of the Gumrum coffee shop that it was opened by one of the Chosun Exchange participants. And this woman, she went to one of our workshops, and she wanted to start her own business, and she traveled to Shanghai to get the certification as a barista. And she also has her own shop card, which every 10 stamps for every coffee, they give you one coffee for free, which is quite interesting in, to see that kind of marketing communications in North Korea. And this is during one of our trips there. It's a very nice cafe. And I remember I had an affogato coffee. It's quite nice, pricey, but it was quite good.
So the point you raised about the marketing card, I mean, it's very new, right? A lot of these concepts, we think we are very used to it overseas. When our workshop leaders go in there and share with them this experience, they're just like, wow, this is just fascinating. This is new to me.
Yeah, it's something as easy as a job card, but I mean, for them, it's like quite new. And I remember also, the guy on the right, he developed this surge protector for electric motors back in 2016. And it just happened that he attended also another Chosun Exchange workshop in 2018 during my first trip. And he gave an update to the audience as in how he improved over these 2 years, as in hiring more people, also bringing down the cost of producing the product. And he also started his first campaign, his first marketing campaign, that it was proudly made in Korea, that it was aimed in order to bring this patriotism from the consumers in order to buy his product instead of the Chinese competition, which they also could have access to. So just to give you an idea that those small changes, it's bringing like positive things for them individually, to this person and his family.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a very interesting image here. So, I mean, this is from the workshop up outside of Pyongyang City, the capital. And we run this. So I think the context was that we run this 6-month accelerator program up to the workshop, and then the founders there, they're mostly very small business, very early stage research backgrounds who are trying to build new products. And at the end of this program, they come in to pitch to you guys, the volunteers, the workshop leaders, to get feedback and to understand how we think about some of these businesses, right? What they can do better, what they should be thinking about. So yeah, it was very interesting. I remember some of the other volunteers were telling me that the guy was making the surge protector. They were trying to see like, oh, how do you kind of, can you price differently from the Chinese? Can you price at a premium, or do you have to price at a discount? And he just hadn't went through that kind of pricing exercise before.
I mean, I'm sure that you've had to answer the question about what do you do there and the importance of the work of Chosun Exchange there. Mostly for people that they haven't been there and they never thought about North Korea having entrepreneurs. When I first told my friends that I was going there, they thought that I got crazy maybe. They said, no, I'm going as a teacher. I'm going to teach entrepreneurs. And they were like, are you serious? I mean, you're joking, right? So it's very difficult for us to explain then after the trip, why our work matters. So normally, how do you address this situation when someone asks you, but why are you going to North Korea to teach entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I think if you ask me, like it's a country where there isn't ready access to the internet. In a sense, we're kind of like the Google on the ground there. Right? Information is very scarce. We go in there, the knowledge we share, people respect it a lot. They desire it a lot just because they have very little touch points with the rest of the world. And I think it's a very low trust environment, right? So people need to meet, to have a meaningful dialogue, and to connect with people, to understand the context of that knowledge. So I think that's, I think at one level, just helping these individuals, giving them access to that knowledge is critical. And we hope that it builds a bridge to these people. So someday they would be much more connected to international society. I think we mentioned in the past that the stakes are bigger. I mean, obviously we play a small part in building bridges, but the stakes are at an international level is so much bigger, right? There's this risk of potential nuclear war happening on the Korean Peninsula, and I like to think that the work our volunteers and we do in the country helps a small part in ensuring that those lines of dialogue, lines of communication remain in place, and that with the hope that over decades or years we can build a better understanding of each other.
Absolutely. So so the big question is do you think that entrepreneurs can bring peace to North Korea?
Yes, I believe that. I think we drive changes at an individual level. We help people, business people there learn entrepreneurship, understand how the rest of the world is thinking, and build better livelihoods for themselves and for others. I think we share a part of our values when we go in there and have that interaction with them. And I think this also leads to broader policy changes as people there understand what it means to support a healthy economic system itself. I don't know, like when you were there on the ground in your first workshop, how do you feel people reacted to what you had to share?
It was just fantastic. I mean, they were like so hungry for knowledge and for learning new things. Then I remember that my team, they had great ideas, but they really struggle as in how to deliver those ideas on the stage because, during the workshop, it's a 2.5 days workshop. And then the last day, they have this Shark Tank that they need to pitch their project to the audience. And then they vote and have different prizes. So I remember that my team delivering. It wasn't that good, but the ideas that they had was so fantastic. And then seeing the examples of these alumni from Chosun Exchange workshops that they were able to implement those learnings into their business there and then improve and have a better life. To me, that was like super rewarding, even though it was the first time that I was going there. So even during the second and the third trip that I did, I've seen students repeating, going there several times, because they want to keep up with the new trends and reinforce those concepts. And this photo in particular, it's one of my favorite moments. It's a friend of us, in Pyongyang, during these morning walks that we do next to the river, there were these locals playing badminton, and we're looking at them just amazed as in how normal they were doing, and they invited us to participate. So I think that through entrepreneurs and businesses, I think that we can bring some peace and improvement for the country. So even though that we work in the micro level, there's definitely something that we can do there, and that's why we need to continue our work, because as you know, with the COVID, everything has changed. And before COVID, we have in-country programs and overseas programs, but right now we cannot travel there and we cannot bring them out. So we're working on different solutions, but we would like, I don't know, the audience, if they have any ideas or questions as in how we could do this better, with this new normality that we're living right now, it would be fantastic. Because as soon as the borders are open, we're going to go back there again. And if anyone wants to join us, as a volunteer and share the knowledge, because I'm sure that there's a lot of very interesting people listening to us right now, that they have a lot to add to the conversation. So if they want to come with us, it will be a pleasure to bring you there and share your knowledge with the North Koreans.
Yeah.
So unless you want to add anything else, Jeff, at this point, no?
Yeah. I think I just echo what you said. We think that there's huge value for us bringing volunteers there to share the knowledge, but also for people to understand the country better, and to have that human interaction. So go to our website, join our mailing list. And then, once we are bringing people back there again, we'd love to have people joining us in the country and kind of seeing for themselves what's happening on the ground there. Thanks.
Yeah, because that's something that we have like two missions. So one is when we go there just to bring that knowledge to the country, but also when we come back and people start asking us about that week in North Korea, we have to demystify those myths as in the country. And also I've brought like a few friends of mine that after hearing my story, they were like, Alvaro, that sounds fantastic. Can I go with you next time? So just to give an idea. So that should be for the moment for our presentation, and we're ready for questions. So if anyone is interested, just go ahead.
What's the biggest challenges we face? Should I take that, Al? Yeah. So I think for us, I think we're dealing with a very volatile environment, and it's not, North Korea itself is challenging. It's very bureaucratic. People, I think we find rare partners that are willing to take risks to make innovation, to make change happen. But anytime you do something that's different, you need to take risks. And it's, I think, a place where a lot of people are just not willing to take risks because they see, like things might not work out well for them, and people become discouraged over time. But I think also externally, it's been a challenge, right? I think the tensions on the peninsula comes and goes. The policy towards the peninsula comes and goes. And I think having to work in that environment is not easy. For example, some periods like sanctions flare up, we have to do things in a compliant manner, and those become challenging and expensive to deal with. So those, we never work in a place where there's a smooth year. Every year we always say there's what we're running from one crisis to another, and most of it nothing to do with us personally, but just the broader environment, and a lot of it having nuclear weapons involved. So it's not easy.
Yeah, exactly. I would say like following the rules, inside the country and outside the country, being compliant with the sanctions. It's extremely difficult because sometimes we have an idea that it's great, but unfortunately we cannot develop it. So to play by the book, that's I would say that the biggest challenge for us.
How's the virus affecting us?
Well, I was supposed to meet, along with a colleague from Social Exchange, our last trip in April. And we decided to cancel the trip on the first week of February. Back then I remember that I wasn't sure if it was the right call to do it. I knew we had to do it, but I was like, maybe it's a little bit like soon to cancel it and then see what happens. So that canceled our April program, also August and November, quite probable. So in-country programs are out of the question, but also bringing them out. So I would say that engagement face-to-face would be the main challenge we have right now.
Yeah, I think we don't know, right? We don't know how bad coronavirus is in the country. I do think that they were one of the very early countries to shut international travel. In fact, they tend to have a history of being very sensitive to pandemics like this, whether it's even anywhere near the region. Just because they don't have, I think they believe that there isn't the international aid and the healthcare system to deal with it. So I'm hopeful in the sense that because they were early to close their borders, that the problem isn't very bad there. But the truth is that, like everyone else, we don't have a lot of information or data to go with.
So next question, maybe.
Cool.
Okay. Well, so if there's no more questions, I mean, thank you very much, everyone, and also Campus Party for giving us the chance to be part of this huge, fantastic event. I mean, to the participants, I mean, remember to give a donation to Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, and also, I mean, if you're interested in what we're doing, please check our website, chosonexchange.org. We have a lot of information there, and we're more than happy to just follow up with you if you have any questions about what we do, and if you want to join us, we're more than happy.
Thanks.